Good evening, everyone. Hope we're all doing well. I am Chris, and I am here with a brand new movie review today. The award season is right around the corner. The 95th, I believe it is, the 95th Academy Awards is due to take place on March the 12th. I think for us in the UK, it's going to be the early hours of March the 13th. It's going to be a very, very late night again. I was debating whether or not to watch the Oscars this year. I think last year it's an absolute all-time low in terms of my tolerance with just Hollywood in general and all of the people that frequent it and the actors and all the things they get up to. And I was debating whether to even do this year with the Academy Awards, but if you've been following me for a while on my previous channel, and indeed on this one, I went live last year for the Oscars. Watching as many of the Academy Award nominated films is just something that I do. It's something that I'm into. It's like a tradition. And for better or worse, I am upholding tradition this year in 2023, damn it. And on the night of the Oscars, I'm going to be doing a live stream. I'll be chatting about all the big hitters and well, I've basically got a month and a half to get them all watched, or at least as many of them as I can. I'm going to focus my efforts on the Best Picture nominees. I'll also be watching because I love animation as well. I'll be watching the nominated films in the Best Animated Feature category. And if I get time, if I get some extra time after that, I'll try and watch some of the performance-based ones as well, or the ones that are maybe only nominated for one or two awards along the line. There we go. Apparently, my live stream had lost connection to my microphone there. I don't know what happened there. But for more information close to the time, when I actually know when the ceremony is going to take place and the time, what time I'm going to be going live, everything like that, the best thing to do is follow me on my social media. So that's my Twitter going across the bottom of the screen right there. You can follow me at Hobbit Fan Editor. That's at Hobbit Fan Editor. And as I said, I'll post all the times that I go live, when you can expect to see stuff. And also, I'm a lot more active on now. I've got the community tab on my YouTube channel. I'm much more active on there and kind of keeping you guys in the loop and what I'm up to at the moment, and when you can expect reviews as well. So do hit the subscribe button if you like what you see, if you like what you hear. If you don't, that's fine too. And let me know your thoughts on The Fabelmans, which I guess I should have opened with this. That's the film that we're going to be talking about tonight. Hopefully we get some people in the chat. If not, no worries. I don't think this will be an overly long review. I haven't got an extensive amount to say on this film particularly. But The Fabelmans is the 2022. I have to get my head around this as well, that, we're going for the 2023 Academy Awards. But although this is released for us in the UK in 2023, this was released in film festivals and stuff like that last year. So although we're in 2023 and I saw it literally a couple of hours ago, it's the 2022 coming-of-age drama film directed by Steven Spielberg. It's co-written by Tony Kushner, and it stars Michelle Williams, Paul Dano, Seth Rogen, Gabriel LaBelle, and Judd Hirsch. This film is, I'll go over the plot synopsis now for people who aren't familiar with The Fabelmans, don't know what it's about. Plot synopsis reads: growing up in post-World War II era Arizona, young Sammy Fabelman aspires to become a filmmaker as he reaches adolescence, but soon discovers a shattering family secret and explores how the power of films can help him see the truth. As I mentioned, this is a film semi-autobiographical on Spielberg himself. The film actually, right before it began, so after all the trailers and everything, right before the film was due to start, there was a little video intro attached to the film. I don't know if that's attached just to, because I went to see this at an Odeon cinema. I expect it's probably attached to every single copy of the film. And it's so rare to see that with a film where the director themselves is actually addressing the camera. Sometimes you get it on a DVD feature where, they've got I'm showing my age now, DVDs. No one watches DVDs. It's all Blu-ray and 4K now, isn't it? You get the little introduction thing you can click on there and you can just watch the director talk about the film. But I think it's nice. It makes it personal. And, Spielberg, absolute master of his craft. Christ almighty. How many feature films has he done now? He's done a lot. And he mentioned that this is his most personal film that he's ever made. So I thought that was a really nice introduction leading you into the film. And indeed, reading about the film as well, just the making of this film is fascinating, and how open and open and personal Spielberg was with all of his cast in order for the actors to find the characters and to tap into some of those emotional moments in his life. I think Seth Rogen, who obviously is in the film, remarked that there were many scenes in the film where he'd look over and Spielberg was crying as he was, shooting the film. And you can clearly tell that, I mean, it goes through, as the plot synopsis mentioned, his adolescence, his formative years growing up. I think it's from about the age of 7 up to about 18. He's becoming a man, he's making a name for himself, and he's getting started in the industry. That's pretty much where the film ends up. So beyond the concept that this was a film, it was a film about film. There's a few of them out there, actually, Cinema Paradiso. Oh God, Hugo is another one. Films like that. I always do enjoy films like that. Films about film. Even things such as, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Tarantino movie, where it's like a peek behind the curtain at the life of Hollywood and actors and classic films in it. It really does show you an appreciation for that era of filmmaking, and just I love artistic people. Now, granted, it is a film based on his life, so there's a lot of things in this film. I mean, the name of the family, the Fabelmans, they're meant to be portraying, the real life parents and the real life peers and everything of Spielberg, but they've obviously given fictitious names in this. The name Fabelman, I think, was an idea by the co-writer with Spielberg on this. Oh God, what's his name? Toby Kushner, I believe it was. Because Spielberg itself means it means like play. I think it's like literally translates out to like play mountain, but to spiel is to talk. So spiel, like a play or something like that. They wanted to do a play on word on that, essentially. So the German word fable, which we all know is a story, and Fabelman, he is a storyteller, essentially. That's so I quite liked that. I like that they gave it that name. If I go into positives about this, yeah, as I mentioned, I like films that are about films, and it's nice to see some classic Hollywood, or even if it's just like classic Hollywood posters in there. This is an absolute love letter to film. Of course it is, because it shows through the eyes of the character. I want to say actually played fantastically by Gabriel Labelle. Really, really enjoyed his performance in this. The way they made him up, he looked exactly like a young Steven Spielberg, which I thought was fantastic how they did that. I think he watched a lot of old footage or old photographs of Spielberg, and they styled his hair correctly, and he adjusted his posture. I mean, it's what an actor does, right? So yeah, through the character of Sammy Fabelman and seeing him through his formative years, he brings a real charm to it, a real humor to the role. And there's a lot of emotional scenes in this film too. And I really, I haven't seen him in anything else. I'll check his filmography here, but I'm getting the impression he's a pretty new and upcoming star. Let me just see if I've seen anything that he might have been. He was in The Predator, which I did watch, but I'm still trying to forget that. He's been in a couple of TV shows as well. So I think inherently this is his big breakout role, being spotted by Spielberg. I think I read as well that he did the audition for it, and then he didn't get a call back until like 3 months after. I don't know if that's usually the way it goes in Hollywood with scheduling and everything like that. But I think he was under the impression that he hadn't got it at first, and then imagine getting that call 3 months later, like you wanted to play the lead character in the new Spielberg movie. Must have been amazing for him. And I get the impression that Spielberg's really good with his cast as well. As I said, specifically for this one, because it is a very personal film to Spielberg himself. I get the impression he spent even more time with the actors in this one, especially the character, playing himself. I mean, it's enormous pressure for an actor that young, and when you've got the director there, like right behind the camera, and you're portraying their life story, that's a hell of a lot of pressure, especially if they haven't tackled anything of this magnitude before. I'm going to spoil something towards the end of this film, which was a nice surprise. I guess it's like a director or slash celebrity cameo. So if you haven't seen the film and you want to see it, go and watch this, because I will give this away now. But it ties in with Gabriel LaBelle's performance. He meets, a classic Hollywood director, Ford, and is played by David Lynch. It was great. David Lynch just shows up, which apparently it took a lot of convincing to get him in the film. David Lynch is renowned pretty much for being a bit curmudgeonly, not afraid to speak his mind at all, being a little bit of a abrasive person. You have to catch them in the right mood, if they're ever in a good mood. Obviously, fantastic director. But David Lynch plays the director at the very end of the film. And he's basically playing it just like David Lynch. That's exactly how I imagine he would be in person. And it's a great exchange between the two at the end of the film. It's when, I keep wanting to say Spielberg because it's based on his life, but Sammy, I guess the character of Sammy, it's when he's given his big break at the end and he gets into, like a movie lot. And I think he initially goes for an interview for a TV show. But in his letter, he wrote to this TV company or this production company saying he wants to make his own movies. And the guy says, the best director who ever lived is just across that office, just outside that corridor right there. I'm going to let you meet him. And it's a great exchange. And apparently the exchange between, or in this movie, the character of Sammy and David Lynch, I'm just going to call him David Lynch, that was the exact same conversation, almost verbatim, that Spielberg had when he was breaking into the industry. And it's this great moment. He tells him to go and look at these, it's just like paintings on a wall. It's landscape paintings of Westerns, cowboys and Native Americans and everything like that. And he says, tell me where the horizon is in that picture. And he's like, at the top. He's like, good. Okay. Tell me where the horizon is in that picture. And he says, at the bottom. And he says, yeah, if you're shooting something, if the horizon's at the bottom, like that, or whatever, it's a good shot. If the horizon's at the top, like that, it's a good shot. If you've got it in the middle, if the horizon's in the middle, it's fucking boring. And there's an amazing moment, the very end shot of the film. It's great. It's the moment where Spielberg himself breaks the fourth wall. And sometimes breaking the fourth wall can take me out of a film, but it was a really, really nice moment at the end of this film. The very final shot of the film is kind of like a mid shot, and then Spielberg corrects himself at the end and tilts it up so the horizon's at the top. It was a great moment, so I really enjoyed that. We'll go into more of the performances now. We're getting some comments in, though, so thanks, guys. Thank you for stopping by and dropping me a comment. I always love engaging with you guys. So let's bring up some of these. We've got Bath Time with Vaughn HD. Says, sorry to ask something unrelated to what you're doing at the moment, but we'll be seeing The Last of Us reviews. That's a great point, actually. I hadn't thought of doing them, but I know that it is a big TV show at the moment. I've actually never played. I've seen the game be played. I've seen a bunch of Let's Plays. I think I've seen The Last of Us about 3 times on a Let's Play, and unfortunately, I've seen The Last of Us 2 as well. So I'm familiar with the story and the characters, but I haven't watched any of it yet. If you guys want to see reviews on it, do let me know. I'm very, very much in it. I don't get much free time now as it is, but I am very much inundated with the Academy Awards films at the moment, and I'm making those my priority. But if you guys would like to see weekly reviews on The Last of Us, then I guess I could catch up with them. If you want to see that. It's about mushrooms that drive people around like cars. That's pretty much exactly it, isn't it? I do like the design for the clickers, actually, though. I think if you're going to do something zombie-related, I think it's an interesting take on it, at least, despite the fact that they're still zombies, I've always said that I think it's very difficult to break the mold when it comes to zombie-related things. I don't know how you can make it interesting. You either have slow-moving zombies, you have fast-moving zombies, you have sentient zombies, you have rabid dog zombie. You can't really do much more than that. But the clickers are interesting. Bath Time with Vaughn says you didn't like The Last of Us 2. I think as a game, it looks like it plays very well. The mechanics look a lot more refined than The Last of Us 1. story, character motivations, and what they did to so many of those characters, hell to the no. I think it's an absolute slap in the face, to be honest. And there's some clear agenda pushing as well, which I didn't appreciate in The Last of Us 2. Toby, oh god, I've forgotten how to pronounce your name. Alston? I'm going to go with Alston. You did correct me one time. I apologize. Let's go with Toby. Saw Spielberg's masterpiece printed large on the poster for this film. Is this really his masterpiece? Or, I mean, he's created many wonderful films. Guessing I'm asking if it's worth the ticket. That actually brings me on to my next point. Now, did I hate this film? No, I absolutely didn't. Did I love it? And I mean, if posters are saying Spielberg's masterpiece, this isn't his masterpiece. Nowhere close to a masterpiece. I should have mentioned, actually, this film has been nominated for 7 Academy Awards. It's one of the biggest ones this year, one of the biggest contenders, certainly, for the Academy Awards this year. Let me just bring up a list of the ones that it's nominated for. It's pretty much nominated for most of the categories, to be honest. I did have the link ready. It escapes me now. That is unfortunate. But the big ones that it's going up for, certainly. So it's been nominated for 7, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress for Michelle Williams, Best Supporting Actor for Judd Hirsch. I think there's production design as well. I forget the other ones, they escape me. So this has been lauded. This really has been lauded. And I think that is down to the fact that the Academy likes, as I mentioned, likes films that are about films. They do. It's just one thing that you see films like this crop up all the time at the Academy Awards. They absolutely lap it up. I think also because it's another Spielberg movie, and who are they to not nominate a Spielberg film? Unless it's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, in which case, yeah, don't nominate that shit. And it's a big one for John Williams as well. I think it's his fifth. I think is it 50 years? They've been working together. I think it's their 29th film that he's collaborated on with Steven Spielberg, which is big. You know, it's a big milestone, certainly is. But I don't feel like this is a masterpiece. And the reason that I say that is that I like the crux of the film. It's great seeing, you know, a character, even if you take Spielberg out of the equation and you're just watching this character in the film, I like seeing someone follow their passions. It's one of those classic things, you know, he's surrounded by that family of, this is just a hobby, you need to find a real job and all of this, but following it and ultimately having that real life knowledge, knowing that this is based on Spielberg and where this led to. And it's nice to see that family dynamic where his mom in the film, played by Michelle Williams, who is based on, obviously, his real-life mum, Leah Adler. She really nurtures his passion. She's comes from an artistic background herself. She's a fantastic pianist, dancer as well, totally of the arts, lives and breathes it, whereas his dad, Arnold Spielberg, and obviously the equivalent of the character in this, Bert Fabelman, played by Paul Dano, he's into computing and building things and hands-on and having real tangible things that people can use. And he's a very principled man that is fantastic at what he does. And is, you know, he's followed his passion. This is what he lives for. He enjoys what he does more than anything. And he's successful at it. And he's getting promotions left, right, and center. They're moving across states, across, you know, for his work and everything. And the family has to kind of uproot and follow him. He's putting bread on the table. He's a good man. He's a good father, but he's not as supportive of his son's passions. And sometimes that's the way, you know, sometimes that's the way with things in those family dynamics. But Michelle Williams is really nurturing. It's nice to see that from the character, I think. She's really nurturing of Sammy's passions, and really encourages his early filmmaking. That was some of my favorite stuff in the film, actually, was seeing those initial early films that Sammy's character was making with his 8mm camera. The really hands-on tricks of the trade, sleight of hands kind of thing to get a film made and to see the audience's reaction. Those were some of my favorite bits in the film. And there are a lot of winks and nods, which are, obviously intentionally there because Spielberg's directing it himself, of certain framing, certain shots that are very indicative of films that we have since seen in Spielberg's vast filmography. You've got shots of a group of teenagers on bicycles, which now is very much in our minds from things like Stranger Things, which itself was a homage on those classic 80s films. I'm talking about E.T., of course, right? Even The Goonies, which I know Spielberg didn't direct, but I think he produced that film, didn't he? I know it was a Richard Donner film, but even with like Back to the Future and things like that, you see that was Zemeckis, of course. You see Spielberg's name on there, and I'm pretty sure that's on The Goonies as well. There's shots of there's a moment, there's weird moments in this film, and I'll come on to that in a second, and that's kind of more the negative side of me. So if anyone's seen the film and you kind of feel in the same way, I'd appreciate you guys chipping in. There's a moment where there's kind of a bit of a family bust up. I think Paul Dano's character, the dad of the family, says he's got this promotion, they're going to move country, and he wants them to go. And Michelle Williams, his wife, is completely against the idea. She wants his best friend to come along with them, who it turns out later in the film she's been having an affair with. They try and strike this happy medium in the film where we're meant to sympathize with Michelle Williams' character, but I'm sorry, I just don't. I think she's a horrible, despicable character in this film. So I'll get onto her later on. Great performance. Fantastic performance from Michelle Williams, but I don't like her character. I really dislike her character. And they have this big argument, and then one of their daughters runs in and says, like, "Mommy, there's a tornado outside." And she's like, "Great, let's go and see it." So she dives in the car, she grabs her 3 other children, she throws them in, she hands the baby to Paul Dano, and he's like, "What are you doing?" She says, "Oh, I want to get a closer look at it." And she starts driving. It's like fucking Helen Hunt in Twister. She starts driving after this tornado. And, poor dad of the family right now, man of the house, is like holding this baby. His wife and his adoring children are just driving towards a tornado, not even a word of a mention of why they're going there or putting his children in danger. And she just stares at this tornado. And there's a load of weird scenes in this because it's never addressed again. It's never brought up. People don't feel like real people in this film. And I know that it's behind the veneer of a film. They make the point in the film saying that you can touch on real emotions through film. Of course you can. It's an artistic avenue, but it's still the movies. It's still larger than life. It's not real life. So I get it that, actors, performers, characters within the film can feel more larger than life than perhaps the real life counterparts were. But there's just some really perplexing, weird line delivery in this film and weird dialogue exchanges. And it's never explained. Stuff like this isn't explained. It felt very weird to me. And I get the whole thing about, she wanted to stare in the eyes of the storm. It's taken it very literally. There is literally a storm raging in her life, and she's filled with this inner turmoil of she wants to stay behind in the place where they're at, but she's got to move. So there's like a literal storm, and maybe her wanting... I guess it kind of as I'm talking myself through it now, I'm kind of seeing the point of it. Earlier in the film, I'm all over the place with this guy, so bear with me. Earlier in the film, young Spielberg goes to the cinema, and The Greatest Show on Earth, I think it's called. And there's like a big train crash in the movie, and he was kind of enraptured by it, excited by it, but also kind of terrified by it. And Michelle Williams makes a point in the film, he's waking up at night, he's having dreams, he's like screaming at night, like thinking of this train, like he wants a train. And she says this is his way of processing the film that he saw, because he watched this film at a very young age. He was really nervous to go to the cinema because he thought the people on the big screen were massive, were giants, and he was very scared. And he needs to see this train crash in order to process it. So she gives him a camera, and he's got like a little model railway, and he makes like a little mini film with this little miniature railway, and he keeps like crashing it, and he pieces this little film together. And him watching that is his way of processing it. So I guess in a way, her looking at this storm is her way of processing everything that's going on. She needed to literally look at the tornado. But she also endangered the life of her children by just throwing them in a car, handing a newborn babe to her husband with no word of explanation, taking off in the car, being extremely selfish, which they do make a point of in the film. But then they kind of backtrack and say, oh no, she's just misunderstood. And they kind of find a happy medium between the two of them when they eventually divorce. And I'm sorry, I'm just not on her side at all. I think that's an incredibly immoral thing to do, what she does in the film. And everyone sees it as normal. No one brings stuff like this. There's loads of weird moments like this in the film. There's another moment which made me very, very uncomfortable, actually. They all go on a camping trip. And this is when Spielberg, Sammy, is making movies left, right, and center. So he's very well versed around the camera. And they go on this camping trip, and he's filming constantly, basically. He wants to make like a little home movie of it. And there's a moment where Michelle Williams just gets up and does an interpretive dance. She's had a bit to drink, and she gets up and she starts dancing. She starts dancing her way around it, and she's in like this white gown, this white nightgown. And Seth Rogen puts the lights on in his car, the headlights on his car to light up the frame so that Sammy can film it properly. And one of the daughters runs up and says, God, turn off the camera, Sammy, because this is weird. Like, Mom is in a see-through gown because the light's coming behind her. Like, you can see her underwear, you can see through her dress. And he's like, no, it's fine. And I'm like, there's some weird Oedipus stuff going on right now. It's weird exchanges like that are meant to be endearing, I guess, or artistic. She's doing this like interpretive dance, and her son is filming it. And even when his sister stands up and she's like trying to block the mom by saying like, no, her dress is see-through, like, oh, you shouldn't be filming this. And he's like, no, shut the fuck up. Like, I'm filming this. This is good shit. That's really weird to me. That's a weird exchange. I mean, if this is how normal exchanges go in Hollywood, then hey, I mean, there's your evidence right there why they're all fucked up in Hollywood and just debauched assholes left, right, and center. But there's other scenes where it's almost framed like a horror film. There's a moment in the film where Michelle Williams' mom dies, and she's completely grief-stricken. She's like catatonic. She won't eat. She stays in bed all the time. She's not spending time with the kids. She's not doing anything. She's just kind of languishing. And I thought it was posing a moment in the film where it was gonna, because I don't know anything about Spielberg's parents or what he went through or anything like that. So this was all new information to me. And as I said, a lot of it could be, embellished and taken out of context from the real life stuff. But she wakes up at night, and the phone's ringing right next to the bed, and she picks it up, and she hears the voice of her mom on the phone, and the way she's talking is like, "Mommy," and like the voice of her mom on the phone's like, she's crying. She's like, "For God's sake, don't let him in! Don't let him in! When he do not let him in!" And like the music's like really tense and it's really creepy. And I thought, are we doing a Beautiful Mind thing right now? Is this gonna say that she's going schizophrenic or something like that? She's completely grief-stricken and she's hallucinating and having imaginary conversations with people. And her husband, Paul Dano, is just out of his mind. He just, he takes the phone, puts it down on the receiver. He listens to it and it's dead. She's completely, she's madder than a sack full of cats at this point. But then it's played as like like she literally had a premonition, because then the next day her long lost uncle shows up, and they let him in, and she's fine with it. And I guess the bad thing about letting him in, when the mom was saying don't let him in, is that Spielberg's, Sammy is going to go on this path and is going to become a master filmmaker and is going to be a slave to his art, which isn't a bad thing, because Michelle Williams is really passionate about her son's passion and the arts and encourages it. So why would that be a bad thing? It's weird. It's a total shift at that part in the film with that phone call. And I thought we were going to go down like a really dark and depressing scene of, you know, Michelle Williams becoming schizophrenic or needing therapy, or which she later does in the film. And then Judd Hirsch comes in. He's the uncle. He's like the crazy uncle who gets a pretty great monologue in the film. But again, the people don't talk like real people in this film. Everyone feels, I don't know if it's the writing, I don't know if it's the direction, or a combination of both, but there are so many bewildering scenes to me, and I haven't had that in a film for a long time. Granted, if you've got a director that's got a distinctive style, right? If you watch a Tarantino film, people are going to talk a certain way, people are going to act a certain way, you're going to have certain mannerisms in those films. If you've got I'm trying to think of like an auteur director, right? Usually you see a film, and even Michael Bay, you know, I'm not a fan of his films, but when you've got stuff like Pain and Gain, or you've got like the supporting characters in Transformers, they're all fucking weird. But it's kind of Michael Bay. You kind of know what you're getting in for with one of his movies. This one was just all over the place. And I think it took away from some of the drama for me. I couldn't really attach to, with the exception of Sammy, I couldn't really attach to any of the characters. There's a lot of caricatures in there as well. I don't know if caricatures is the right word, but when he goes to high school, you've got the jocks, and they do get a bit more dimensions towards the end, but a lot of the framing is just, there's no layers to them initially until the very end. And then when they do suddenly grow a personality, it comes like, whoa, where's this come from? So I don't know if I'm being too harsh on this film, but to me, that the biggest drawback from this film for me was just some weird, perplexing scenes. A lot of dialogue just didn't feel natural to me in scenes. And when this is a semi-autobiographical film where you are latching on to those deep personal connections to his life story and his upbringing, kind of took me out of the film a little bit, because people didn't feel real. And maybe it was intentionally done like that, where people are just... I mean, I've highlighted some of them now. If you guys have seen the film, you'll know what I'm talking about if you've latched onto it too, but it just bewildered me more than anything. Like when you've got David Lynch who shows up at the end, right? And he's this crazy curmudgeon who comes in, this out of his mind director. Yeah, I can see that because David Lynch is pretty much like that as well. But not when you're having like these deep-seated like family moments, and the breakdown of the family and the dialogue between them just wasn't there for me. It was weird. So I felt like I couldn't get emotionally attached to anything that was going on. And especially towards the end of the film, where they try and make you sympathize for Michelle Williams' character. And I'm sorry, I just don't. I just really don't. I think she's a horrible, despicable woman. And I think Paul Dano was glad to see the back of her, personally, for me. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Oh, wow. We've got a lot of comments. Let me just go back a second, guys. I know I'm kind of waffling on this one. I've got a bit of brain fog, actually, just after this film. As I say, I didn't hate this film. I didn't hate it at all. It was a fine evening at the movies. But masterpiece it ain't. It really, really isn't a masterpiece. Going back to zombies real quick. Bath Time says, I saw a good zombie film that was original called Pontypridd. I think about zombies that spread by a catchphrase. Oh, okay. No, I haven't heard of that one. Is that... I'm guessing that's kind of like a low-budget indie movie, is it? I haven't heard of that one before. It sounds like a fun concept. No, maybe I'll have to check that one out. Ever seen the movie Warm Bodies? I haven't seen it. I know the one you're talking about, though. But no, I haven't seen that one. But I know it's a zombie comedy. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's a zombie romantic comedy. I mean, one of my favorites, everyone always goes for Shaun of the Dead, right? But I've got to give the edge to Zombieland. I absolutely loved Zombieland. The first one. The second one, I've only watched it once. It was like 10 years too late, unfortunately. Bath Time says his masterpiece will be Indiana Jones 5, from what I hear. It's going to be incredible what they do. I really hope you're being sarcastic from that. Actually, yeah, you are. It can't be true. It's going to be time travel and retcons. Oh, it is. It is. You mean Indiana Jones 4 and Skulls and that. Dial of Destiny is going to be an unmitigated disaster. I am calling it now. I think the leaks are going to be true. There are rumors that they're doing extensive reshoots at the moment. They're significantly cutting down Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character. I think it's going to be a fucking train wreck. It's like when the sequel trilogy, I followed the production of the sequel trilogy really, really closely. And I read all of the leaks that came out from that. And some of them were kind of accurate. When Rise of Skywalker came out, I read the leaked plot synopsis for that. And I think they had the opening title crawl as well. I read the whole thing and it was like 90% accurate. It was outstanding. So there's no smoke without fire. I think it's going to be a fucking mess. But Spielberg isn't directing it. So he's off the hook with this one. I'll never forgive him for Indiana Jones 4. He can go to hell for that. But he's not directing this one. So... Bath Time says, I quite liked parts of the film, especially when some driver runs off with a communist to feed them. Was that in this movie? I forget about that part. So we've got some more Indiana Jones comments there. Toby says, in light of seeing this film from Spielberg, do you think Quentin Tarantino is right to stop at his 10th film? That's a very interesting question, actually. It kind of goes to the age-old thing, doesn't it, of have the greats had their day? Are there more stories to tell? Will they always stay at the top of their game? I don't see why Tarantino needs to stop at 10. He argues it's because he doesn't want to make a bad film. And I'm like, well, you already have, mate. It's called Death Proof. Death Proof is fucking terrible. I can't stand it. And I love Kurt Russell in it. Kurt Russell's fantastic. I absolutely hate Death Proof. And I've seen some arguments because it's based, it's like a grindhouse film, isn't it? It's based on that type of cinema. And that kind of cinema was typically very shit. So if he's made a shit film that's based on shit films, then great. But no, so in my opinion, Tarantino's already made a bad film. So if that's his reason, I don't think Tarantino should stop. I don't think any director should stop, really. If they've got stories they want to tell, who are we to say they should stop? You've got Clint Eastwood, who's old as shit, still making movies. Now, granted, not all of his movies are fantastic, but he's still making movies, and he's still got stories to tell, and he's still a man of his craft. Scorsese, great fucking director. Even still, now, are his modern films as good, maybe, as some of his classic ones? Goodfellas, Casino, the ones, Scorsese. That's up for debate, but I think he's still a very good director. So I don't know. I mean, Spielberg, to me, I don't think he's a bad filmmaker. I haven't enjoyed the last few films that he's made, but I don't think he's a bad filmmaker. I do think that he's lost his edge a little bit, especially when it comes to, like the popcorn films, but he's getting on. He's getting old, and people's sensibilities change. People go through life. They're different people. So he's not always going to be making those films that I see people call this a masterpiece. To me, Spielberg's masterpieces, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, the 3 Indiana Jones films, and yes, there are only 3 Indiana Jones films. Stuff like that. That's masterpiece. E.T., absolute classic. Not one of my favorite. I came very late to the party at E.T. I watched it in my teenage years. I didn't watch it as a kid. It's still a classic film, though. I'd call those films more masterpieces than this one, personally. I'm never going to watch this film again. I can quite easily tell you that now, that I will never watch this film again. Indiana Jones trilogy, I still throw on from time to time. Absolutely tremendous films. Bath Time, still talking about Tarantino. Bath Time says, I'm not a huge sci-fi fan, but I'd have fucking loved to have seen Tarantino's Star Trek. It would have been so classic, wouldn't it? It would have been like the classic. I think it would have made it like the original series, definitely. Let's see. Let's go back to the film anyway. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can talk about this. as I mentioned, some of my favorite scenes were the scenes where a young Sammy was making, and I think they actually were the films that Spielberg made. I'm pretty sure that the titles really resonated with me, and I think I've read them before, that they were Spielberg's original films. And the actor who played Sammy as well actually got to keep the 8mm camera as a souvenir. Spielberg said that he could have it, and I think he had to learn how to splice film together. You know, the classic, we take editing for granted so much now with digital editing, but seeing that old practice in this film was a joy to see. You know, taking the film strips and, you know, having to actually physically cut them, glue the cells together. It's really nice, and I think Spielberg even mentioned when he was making the film, it was he missed those days. It was very nostalgic to him to see that happening in the film. I'm trying to think of any other scenes, anything else that's notable about this film. I guess I could talk about the music. John Williams, absolute one of the all-time greats. The music's very understated in this film, and I think that was a you know, the right choice. It's not a theme, it's not a melody, it's not a bombastic score like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, E.T., the Harry Potter films, or anything like that. Any of like the really, really memorable main themes that John Williams usually comes up with. It's very understated. It's very piano focused as well, intentionally so. Michelle Williams' character is a professional pianist in the film, and it was actually difficult to know when John Williams' score was coming in, or it was just playing traditional classical music. There's intentionally chosen piano classical music from some of the greats. You've got Chopin in there. You've got Haydn in there. I know. I'm trying to see. Trying to think what else it was. Let me find it on here. They're pieces of music that I recognize inherently, is what I'm saying. Clementi, there we go as well. You got some Clementi in there too. So a lot of it, there's a lot of monologues. There's a lot of, you know, what Spielberg does best, where he captures someone's emotion. He just holds on their expression, so we get to soak that in. And you've got this like wonderful piano solo that's played over the top. A lot of the piano music in this film was played by the Los Angeles, the lead pianist, the principal pianist at the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra. Joanne Pierce Martin is the name. Beautiful playing. I mean, I've got to do some piano playing tonight. So it's inspired me. If anything, this movie's inspired me to do some actual goddamn practice tonight. So, but because of that, because there's so much actual classical music in the film, it was difficult for me to tell which stuff was John Williams' own stuff, his original score for the film, and where classical music began and ended. It's nice music. It's very unmemorable to me. And my favorite John Williams scores are always like the main ones. You know, it's the ones that everyone always goes for. It's the ones I just mentioned. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to knock John Williams. Like, Christ almighty, the guy's getting on. And he did say initially that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was going to be his last score. It was going to be his swan song. That was the one he was going to retire on. And then he probably saw how fucking terrible the film is, and then he was like, I'm not going to retire at that. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. So I ain't going to knock the guy. I mean, he's one of the all-time greats. Fucking hell. Absolute. The word genius is so I don't even, I haven't even got words. Doesn't do him justice by any stretch of the imagination just to call him a genius. He is beyond that. But I didn't really notice the music all that much. And maybe that was a choice by Williams himself. Maybe he was like, you should be focusing on the performances in the film and what's going on, and you don't want the music to be a distraction. You need to know when to back the music off, when to bring it to the forefront. But yeah, the music was fine. It was just fine. Let's see. Sorry, here we go. Bath Time says, wouldn't it be much better if they did it like Amadeus with Spielberg as Mozart, and on the set of Transformers, Michael Bay becomes Salieri? That's a great fucking movie, by the way, Amadeus. And it's actually it's nice. There's always one scene that I go back to, and it's one of my favorite scenes from that film, and it's where Mozart's kind of on his deathbed, almost pretty much. He's really, really ill in bed, and he's writing the score with Salieri, and he's giving him dictation, and Salieri's trying to jot it down, and he can't keep up with Mozart's mind. And it's nice because the more that I study music and keep going back to that, I'll keep coming back to that scene every 6 months or so, and I'll understand a fraction of a thing more. It's nice. It's nice. It's a fantastic film. I need to go back and watch that. Actually, I've got it on DVD, the director's cut. I've never seen the theatrical cut, so I'm not sure which one's better. But yeah, great movie, Amadeus. Oh yeah, so Toby, you mentioned Seth Rogen. I was listening to a crowd behind me after the film finished, and they really enjoyed the film. They loved it. They loved it all across the board, and they said like, "Oh, Seth Rogen was fantastic in it." And I was like, "He was playing Seth Rogen, as Seth Rogen tends to do. It's very rare that he plays an actual character in something." I'm like, he was fine, but he was just Seth Rogen. Toby says, I can't help thinking of the prequels with George Lucas and how too much creative control and self-indulgence leads to a worse movie. It's an interesting debate, isn't it? And I can't remember. I feel like we've had this debate on the channel before, and I can't remember which video it was for. But is a creator having complete creative control a good thing or a bad thing? And I think it's complicated. What's the saying? A camel is a horse designed by committee, which is a phrase that basically means if you're an author, if you've got a vision, but you surround yourself in a committee, the vision's going to change and it's going to become compromised. It won't be what you initially set out to do as a creator, as a visionary, as an artist. So an artist having complete control, for better or worse, you are getting their totally unadulterated efforts. You are getting what was in their mind totally within their control, and you are getting that product, and you are consuming that product or that vision, that piece of art. And I think that can be a beautiful thing. If it's bad, there's only one person to blame. If it's fantastic, then you know where all the praise goes to. I do agree. I think the best films are where a director and a studio work in perfect orchestra together, and I think that's where people are geniuses. People can be geniuses, and ideas come from all different areas. You look at the original Star Wars, going with the George Lucas comparison there. You look at the original Star Wars, and George Lucas tends to get all the credit for that, but it really wasn't all off his own back. He came up with the initial spark for it, but there were so many talented conceptual artists, prop designers, his wife, the editor, John Williams' music, actors lending elements to their performance, everything, all of this stuff from all these wonderful minds came together to make Star Wars what it is. When you look at George Lucas's original ideas and what he wanted to do with it, and even if you look at some of the original deleted scenes, Star Wars would have been an exceptionally different film, totally different film. And personally, we'll never know. This is all conjecture, but I don't think it would have been the success that it was. I say that it was because is it still? Maybe. I don't know. It's an interesting paradigm, though. It's one that, it's one that I don't have an answer for. It's one that I absolutely don't have an answer for. I think sometimes a director having complete control can lead to a fantastic product. I do think it can. Other times, it's, the Zack Snyder Justice League cut. Is it good that we get to see his full vision? Yes. I think it is good that we have the option to see a director's original intention before it gets chopped up in editing. Do I like Zack Snyder's Justice League? No. I thought it was a terribly, as you mentioned, self-indulgent, completely egregious vanity project. It's interesting. Let's see. Toby says, this is regarding Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. about the reshoots. Yes, that's correct. They are reshooting the ending from what I heard. Yeah, well, you know that original ending was, spoiler alert, I guess, for the league. Well, if they're changing the ending now, this won't be a spoiler, but Indiana Jones was good. It didn't even make sense. It was like Looper. It was like he goes back in time and his younger self dies, which makes his older self die, which if we're going with time travel, then you wouldn't have any of the films anyway, because it doesn't make sense. If it was a way to retcon Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, then great, but you're also retconning your own movie and potentially the original trilogy, and that's not okay with me. I think time travel in an Indiana Jones film is just a little bit silly as well, and I think it's probably just a way. It might be like the J.J. Abrams effect, actually, where they just want to go back to Nazis. You know, when you had Force Awakens come out, it was, let's just remake A New Hope. We need a new rebellion. We need a new empire. We need stormtroopers again. We need another Death Star. We need another desert planet. We need all these, another cantina bar. We need all these ingredients that people are familiar with. And actually, one thing that I liked about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was that the focus was shifted to the Russians. Granted, probably, I was going to say, are they as villainous as Nazis? I ain't going to say that, but for the time that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was set, it made sense for the antagonist to be the Russians. I think it was mostly just the scripting and perhaps the performances that didn't really come through, the realization. I think Cate Blanchett could have played a fantastic villain, but I just don't think the writing was there for the character. But I don't think you haven't got to resort to fucking time travel. It was already out there with aliens and UFOs and interdimensional beings, but fucking time travel in Indiana Jones film, just have it be set in Atlantis, have it be a historical artifact that he's got to go after. You ain't got to break the mold with this shit. And they clearly just want Nazis in the film again. They want to go back to the safe and the known. It's exactly like the Star Wars sequel trilogy, because when that was being made, when that was coming out, Disney completely turned their back on the prequels. Completely. It was always, we're doing this to honor the original films. We're shooting it on film, just like the original Star Wars films. We've got the old cast back, just like the original Star Wars. And they were totally dismissive on the prequels. And I get that this is probably going to go that same way. It's going to be, forget Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It was terrible. That didn't happen. We're going to take you back to what, when you think of Indiana Jones, some people don't like Temple of Doom for whatever reason. I don't know why people don't like Temple of Doom. I think Temple of Doom's fucking great. That was actually, out of all three of the films, that was probably the one that I watched the most. It's not my favorite of the three. My favorite is Last Crusade. But I loved Temple of Doom. I still love Temple of Doom. And I know that people go, oh, well, Kate Capshaw's in the movie just because Spielberg was fucking her at the time and he needed to get her in the movie, and she's really annoying and she's screaming all the time. She's the classic damsel in distress. And you know what? There ain't nothing wrong with that. I like the fact that in the Indiana Jones trilogy, all three of the female leads are different in somewhat. You've got Marion Ravenwood, who's this very capable, headstrong, feisty, sassy woman. She can dish it out back to Indy, and they have great banter together. That's fantastic. Love it. In the second one, she's more of the ditzy blonde, and Spielberg was fucking her at the time. And, she's very, we're not sinking, we're crashing, all that stuff. She's just very dippy, isn't she? She's just a bit ditzy. And she's the classic archetype for the damsel in distress, the masculine hero. Remember when we could have those in movies? Has got to go and save. Nothing wrong with it. It's different. And then the third one, of course, you've got Elsa Schneider, I should say, who's a Nazi. And she's like the femme fatale, isn't she? So I like that all three are different, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. But yeah, they need to change the ending. They need to change the ending. Because you know what it's going to be? Phoebe Waller-Bridge is going to be back chatting towards Indiana Jones all the time. They're going to be commenting on his age. She's going to be amazing at everything. She's going to be better at everything. She'll be able to read ancient texts better than him. She'll be able to There'll probably be a scene where she punches a bunch of people better. There'll be a scene where Indy punches someone and it'll be like, oh, my arthritis or something. And then she'll come along and just be like, here, leave it to me. Boof. And like knock someone out. She'll get in a hand-to-hand with like, you know how Indiana Jones always fights the tanky guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He fights that fucking boxer by the plane. In the second one, he fights the big guy on the conveyor belt. In this one, even in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, they stayed true to that, where he fights the big Russian guy who gets eaten by ants. Oh yeah, that happened in that movie, didn't it? Christ. In this film, Indiana Jones is just going to get like his hip broken or something, and then Phoebe Waller-Bridge is going to show up and just have the biggest fight with the biggest fucking roided out guy there is, and she's going to win. All of this stuff's going to happen. It's all going to happen. And then it was going to be a passing of the torch film at the end. And I think that's pretty evident when Disney came out and said that they're doing an Indiana Jones TV series with Phoebe Waller-Bridge. It's going to be a passing of the torch movie. And it's going to be yet another franchise that's completely dragged through the mud. But I'm acting like the damage hasn't already been done to Indiana Jones. You know, I've already been burned by Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is still to this day the worst film I've ever seen in my life. Now, are there worse films out there? Probably, but the one that's had the most damning and lasting impact on me, that physically, emotionally hurt me after I came out of that film and has imprinted itself upon my mind, is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So for those reasons alone, that's why I always say it's the worst film I've ever seen. We have kind of gone on an Indiana Jones tangent, which isn't a bad thing. I will get to the rest of you guys' comments in just a second. I think I'm just going to wrap up on the Fabelmans. Is it a bad film? No, there are elements of it that I really did enjoy when it goes to like the 60s high school stuff. It's it's exceptionally cliche. As I mentioned, you've got the jocks and you've got it's very Back to the Future-esque kind of stuff. You know, you've got a kind of enchantment under the sea dance prom thing. You know, you got the band on stage. It's all, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of elements that if you're a Spielberg fan and you've seen a lot of his films, you'll pick up on immediately. I think I took myself off that subject earlier. I mentioned the whole ET thing with the teenagers on the bicycles. There's a bit where when the kids go into the tornado, they don't literally go into the tornado, but when she drives to the tornado, you've got them staring out the windscreen and the rain's hitting the wind. And it just reminded me of Jurassic Park with the kids right before the T-Rex scene. What are some other scenes? Even with, the high school stuff, as I mentioned, and the era, it reminds a lot of the West Side Story stuff that he remade recently. There's some other shots as well. You've got the classic reaction shots, which Spielberg always does. There's some like classic stuff as well that I've totally forgot. That as soon as I saw it, there's loads of scenes like that though. So if you see the film and you've seen a Spielberg film, you'll pick on some of these elements definitely. Let's see if I can read. Toby says there are only 6 Star Wars films. You goddamn right, my man. If I'm being really arsey, then I'll say there's only 3. But I've found acceptance with the prequels now. Good ideas there. Some fantastic scenes in there, actually. Some genuinely fucking brilliant scenes. There's a lot of bad ones as well. But I think inherently, at least there was a plan. At least there was a guideline. And at least there was a vision for the story that was being told. Bath says they should reboot Star Wars with a film called Cocaine Wookiee. I did get the trailer for Cocaine Bear, actually. That looks like it's going to be one of those classic B movies. You know, when Snakes on a Plane came out and everyone was talking about that for a while. Same with Sharknado. I'm wondering if Cocaine Bear is going to be that new one. Toby says, going back to Indiana Jones, didn't he survive by hiding in a fridge? God, just remembering it now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he goes to a dummy town that's used for an atomic bomb test and howdy doody times on the TV. And because the fridge is lead-lined, he manages to get in. Apparently that idea came from Spielberg as well. Like that to me has just got George Lucas written all over it. But I guess we have the CGI monkeys and the aliens. Sorry, the interdimensional beings and the fucking CGI prairie dogs and oh Christ, and the ants. The ants. When you find out that the original working titles for Indiana Jones 4 were going to be Indiana Jones and the Saucer Men from Mars or Indiana Jones and the Attack of the Giant Ants, I'm not even fucking kidding about that, by the way. Those were actual working titles that George Lucas came up with. When you find out that the original story concept by George Lucas for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was going to be Sean Connery and Harrison Ford, father and son, going to a haunted castle in Scotland, and it was going to be a haunted house movie. Sometimes it's like, George, I want to love you. Would I love to see him make a comeback to Star Wars? At this point, yeah, let's just go for broke. It's like going back to an abusive ex, but I don't know. Sometimes you do want to just tell him to shut the fuck up with his crap ideas. Do you know what? The best, okay, if you guys have seen Batman 89, one of the best Batman films out there with Jack Nicholson, the Joker, Michael Keaton, Batman, there is a scene in that movie that perfectly sums up. There's a visual representation of George Lucas's ideas in that film, and it's when Joker's got the photograph book. He's looking through Vicky Vale's portfolio, and he's like, crap. Ah, now that's good work. You have to go through about 20 shit ideas before you get to a good one, but they're in there. Toby says Clone Wars sold me on the prequels. It definitely helped bolster it for sure. There's a lot of shit in the Clone Wars as well. The Clone Wars is one of the most inconsistent TV shows I've ever seen. When it's good, it's very good. When it's shit, it's incredibly shit. So it's definitely a mixed bag, but there are some pretty good story arcs in there. I will concede that. And it definitely does give a lot more personality to Anakin and Obi-Wan. Can a similar thing be done with the sequel trilogy, do you reckon? If they did an animated show that fleshed out some of the stuff from the sequel trilogy, do you think it could, people could turn around to that? I don't know. Let's see. Bath Time says, why have they never made a sequel to Snakes on a Plane called Reptile Reptile Dysfunction? That's great. Toby says, not a chance in hell. Rey is barely a character. I agree. Segue. I'm enjoying this conversation tonight. I finished the review ages ago. Fabelmans. If you're a fan of Spielberg, I guess it's a nice love letter to his upbringing, and it's nice reading about the making of this film and how personal it was to him. But a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the dialogue scenes just felt very awkward to me. There's a lot of awkward set pieces in this, and I feel like you're meant to have sympathy for characters that I couldn't find sympathy within myself. I think they're just immoral fucking people, and I can't get on board with them at all. And I think you're meant to within the film. So will I ever watch this film again? No, it does feel, I won't say it feels Oscar baity, because Spielberg had an idea for this back in 1999, apparently. I think his sister wrote an initial screenplay or a story idea, at least, I think. All the way back in 99. So this has been an idea that he's been working on for ages, and I think they sorted the script out for this film pretty much around the time that they were during the filming of West Side Story. So, yeah, it's a passion project. It is a passion project. I'd recommend checking it out if you're at all interested in any of these actors, Michelle Williams, Paul Dano. There are some good performances in there, but it's just kind of marred by, and this is what I mean, I don't know if it's bad writing and it just didn't feel natural, or if it was the direction of that script. There was something amiss. Something wasn't right. Something didn't feel right to me. Excuse me. But speaking of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, I've been working on a fan edit. I'm still working on a fan edit. I've got 3 versions of the Star Wars sequel trilogy that I'm currently working on. And I mean, my name on YouTube here is the Hobbit fan editor, and it's been over a year now since I finished that Hobbit edit. So it's nice to work on another project. And let me tell you, the Star Wars sequel trilogy is an absolute whore to work on. Every idea I have is kind of hamstrung by things needing to happen in a sequential order to the order that I want it to happen within the film. So I'm working on 3 different versions at the moment. I'm trying to see what works. Last night, I finished a rough draft on taking all 3 of the films and condensing it into one. It's very choppy and it still needs a lot of work done to it. There's another edit that I'm working on where I've taken episodes 7 and 8 and I've mashed them together, but I've moved events around in the film. But again, it's difficult because there's continuity issues that arise because characters are wearing different costumes to what they are in Force Awakens and vice versa with The Last Jedi. And certain things need to happen before characters get to it. It's really complicated. And I like the structure of it a lot more, but there's continuity issues that arise, which are almost impossible to get yourself out of because you're beholden to the footage that you've got. And then the third version that I've got is a sequential edit. So I've got episodes 7 and 8 together, happening in linear order, obviously cutting out a lot of shit. And let me tell you, there is a lot of shit, especially in The Last Jedi, but also in The Force Awakens. The problem I have with that at the moment is that the ending of The Force Awakens feels like an ending to a movie. It's too climactic. You basically have the death of Obi-Wan. To equate it to A New Hope, which the whole film is basically, you've got the death of Obi-Wan or Han Solo. You've got the destruction of the Death Star or Starkiller Base. And you've also got a final lightsaber duel, which is, I guess, is like Empire Strikes Back or something, right? So you've got 3 massive climactic things that are all happening at once, but they need to happen at about the hour mark in the film. So it can't feel too epic, but Han Solo needs to be there because he needs to die there. Certain things need to happen. They need to have a lightsaber fight because Kylo Ren needs to get scarred on the face. Starkiller Base needs to be destroyed because it doesn't feature anywhere else in the... It's difficult. It's really, really difficult, and I'm having a bit of a fight with it at the moment. But things are in motion. And when I'm not live streaming and when I'm not spending all of my time doing guitar practice and piano practice, which is pretty much all of my free time, actually, but when I do get some downtime, I do like to do some fan editing. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. I might have to put a pin in the fan editing for right now, though, because, as I mentioned, this is the Academy Award season. We're a month and a half away pretty much from it. If you have seen The Fabelmans, let me know what you think of it. Are you planning on seeing it? I don't necessarily think it's a bad film, but I don't think it's one that deserves to be completely lauded by any stretch of the imagination. But the best way to follow me is to just hit that subscribe button. If you like what you see, if you like what you hear, and you want to hear me talk more about movies, have conversations about Indiana Jones and stuff like that. My favorite things on these live streams is that I can just be me. I can go off on tangents. I haven't got to stick to a script, and just know that I'm going to be all over the place with this stuff. So yeah, if you haven't done so already, if you're discovering this video and somehow you've made it 1 hour, 10 minutes into a Fabelmans review, please do consider subscribing. And as I said, I'm going to have a lot more information about upcoming reviews. There's a lot of Best Picture films that I need to watch. I'm going to be covering the Best Animated Feature categories as well. So I'm going to be watching all of the films in that. And then if I get some extra time, I'm going to be watching some of the performance-based ones, which is going to take us very nicely up to the 95th Academy Awards. And I was debating whether I even wanted to do a live stream this year on the Academy Awards because they were an absolute shit show last year. But I feel like I owe it to you guys, and it's a good way to, just kick back. We can chat movies. We can talk about the great films from this year that have been nominated, the not so great ones, and perhaps the very bloody terrible films. So it's just a fun, relaxed space. That's going to be the early hours of March the 13th. But again, I'll have times closer up to the time, so you know exactly when I'm going live. You can also follow me on Twitter as well. If you haven't done so, give me a follow on there. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor. And I'm also very active on the community tab now on my YouTube page. In fact, I tend to post there more than even Twitter. So just subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please, and thank you, with the love. Yeah, I don't know what the next Oscar film is. The next film that I have booked in at my local cinema, actually, this makes me feel very old, is the 25th anniversary of this film, Mulan. It's one of my favorite Disney animated classics. I remember seeing it on the big screen when it came out, and the fact that it says that it's the 25th, when the fact that it says it's the 25th anniversary makes me feel exceptionally old. Ancient, in fact, and it kind of depresses me just a little bit, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing that at the cinema. But in terms of the Academy Award ones, nothing's up on the timetable yet. I know that The Whale's meant to be coming out early February, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm loving this renaissance of Brendan Fraser's career, and he just seems genuinely really down to earth and humbled by everything. So I can't wait to see that. I love Aronofsky as well, the director. I'm always intrigued to see what he does next, and I think it's going to be a very powerful movie, a very near and dear to my heart kind of thing. I'll talk more about that when we get into The Whale. Inherently, I used to be a big guy, not as big as The Whale, but I was a big guy, so I think it's going to be a very emotional film, definitely, and looking forward to seeing this resurgence in Brendan Fraser's career. Other than that, All Quiet on the Western Front is on Netflix, so just whenever I can get to that and get it watched, I'll get a review to you guys. And yeah, plenty more movies coming out. So I'll just see if had any more comments come in, and then I'll round off for tonight and get to some piano practice for myself, I think. Bath Time says stick Jar Jar in it. It's funny you should mention this, actually, and I'm going to have to see if me and JX Editor can jump on a stream. By the way, good friend of mine, his YouTube channel is going across the bottom now. If you haven't checked out his stuff, please do head over there and give him a subscribe. We're chatting about editing ideas all day, every day, pretty much, about Star Wars edits and what we can do. And we did actually have a conversation at one point of where we would put Jar Jar in the sequel trilogy if we were going to do it. And I think we both settled on the idea of, instead of having Max von Sydow's character at the beginning of Force Awakens, you know, in the opening crawl where it says that an old ally of the rebellion or an old ally of Leia's is meeting to hand over a map to Skywalker or something. If that old ally, it always bothered me in the film that it says an old ally, so when you're going into the film, you're expecting to see a familiar face, and we get Lawson Tucker and Max von Sydow, a character we've never had in Star Wars before. We have no backstory on the character. How great would it be if his character was Jar Jar Binks, and he hands over the piece and he says, you know, this will begin to make things right. And, you know, for us who enjoy Jar Jar, we get to see Jar Jar again in his older years. And for people that fucking hated him, Kylo Ren decapitates him a few seconds later. So it's a win-win for everyone. Let's see. Toby says, Mulan is amazing. Yes, it is. When the beat drops on I'll Make a Man Out of You, I can't wait. I think it'll be quite... I mean, I always get... Oh, God, this is going to sound so soppy. I always tend to get quite emotional at animated films. They're very nostalgic to me, definitely, especially the Disney animated classics, which I'm going to hint to this. It's not going to be towards the end of the year, but if you like your animated Disney classics, Disney, definitely stick around on the channel later on this year. There is something massive coming to this channel. I'm going to leave it there for now for that. But yeah, Mulan's one that I remember seeing. I remember having the McDonald's toys as well. Back when McDonald's made really good fucking toys, and you had every year you'd have a great Disney film coming out. Aladdin, the Disney Renaissance was phenomenal, absolutely unparalleled. Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback, Hercules, Mulan, and then it kind of ended with Tarzan, really. That block of Disney films, which was all my upbringing, we had great McDonald's toys to go with each and every one of them as well. Toby says the best of the Disney animated, in my view. It's definitely up there for me. It would definitely be up there. It'd probably be in my top 5 for sure. It's one that I always love revisited anyway. Right before Disney absolutely fucking murdered it with an atrocious live-action remake, which I turned off after 5 minutes, barely even 5 minutes. In fact, I watched a lot of reviews that I trust, and then I thought, you know what, I'll try and give it a watch myself to see if it's as bad as everyone says. And I couldn't make it past the first 2 or 3 minutes, so I have no problems with turning it off and never watching any Disney live action remake again. And the same goes for The Little Mermaid. Do not expect a Little Mermaid live action remake on this channel, because do not expect to see a review for it, because you won't get one. Bath Time says they should release the original Mortal Kombat. The opening would be fucking insane in IMAX with the music. Oh yeah, that's one of the best soundtracks as well. That dun, 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 dun. Yeah, it always gets you amped up. That love the Mortal Kombat music. I guess that'll do it then for tonight. I guess thank you guys for all, staying up as late as you have to watch me prattle on for an hour and 15 minutes. I always appreciate it. Always love having a conversation with you guys. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure tonight. The Fabelmans, I went in going, this is going to be a really tough review to get through. I don't have much to say on it. And thankfully, we've talked about Indiana Jones, we've talked Star Wars, and hell, we've even talked Mortal Kombat as well. So I think that's a good night. That's a very good night in my opinion. So once again, big thank you to everyone. I will see you very, very soon for another movie review. I've got plenty of them to get through, and we'll get through them. We'll get it done. We always do every year. So hope you're all doing well. Stay excellent to each other, and I'll catch you guys on the next live stream. Take care, everyone.